They say there's a time and a place even for fear. And you don't hear this being promoted that much. Because fear gets a bad rap. Because fear will hurt you. It's false evidence appearing real when it's fear without rationality, without rational. A certain amount of fear will tell you not to jump off a building. A certain amount of fear will tell you not to go into a situation that you know you're going to lose in. A certain amount of fear keeps you from making rash decisions. Because being rash is not true bravery. Being rash has a veneer of bravery. But this is simply a person who's afraid to assess the scenario, so they charge in blindly. That is still a manifestation of fear. To go kamikaze, that's still a manifestation of fear. Because it takes a certain amount of bravery to embrace fear. The kind of fear that makes you sharper, the kind of fear that makes you survive, the kind of fear that makes you resourceful. Being afraid to lose, being afraid to give up, being afraid to quit, being afraid to be outsmarted, being afraid to be a failure, being afraid to be mediocre. Fear has its place. Fear has its place. There's even times in recorded scripture where fear was used in the saving of lives. You take Abraham and Sarah. When he was in one of the Pharaoh's lands, he told them that that's not my wife, that's my sister. His fear spared his life. His son ended up doing the same thing. Said, this is my sister, not my wife. Fear. Another manifestation of fear. When the crowd was trying to stone Jesus, he slipped away so that the crowd wouldn't stone him. He chose to evade. Evade would be classified as an action based on fear, although in that particular instance, it may not have been fear as much as just getting out of the situation. Not to save his own life per se, because he volunteers himself for the cross later on, but more so of just avoiding an inconvenience or an annoyance, or to eliminate and bring to a close an otherwise civil disturbance. Fear has its proper place. It has to be utilized. When it's not, though, it becomes a full-blown monster. It's like as you ignore it, it gets stronger. But if you take hold of fear, if you take hold of what makes you afraid, suddenly the fear starts to go away. And you know what starts to replace it? Knowledge. Knowledge starts to replace it because you start to know things. You start to know the enemy more. You start to know your obstacle. You start to understand the ins and outs of your challenge. You start to figure out new ways of thinking. New solutions start to come to mind. New insights start to blossom. This is because you charged into the fear. You went on, you embraced the fear. You didn't shrink back. You didn't run from the challenge. You went toward the fear. You went toward the battle. Even though you were afraid, you still went in to the battle anyway. Even though you were afraid, you still took the test. Even though you were afraid, you still took responsibility because you tackled the fear. You didn't run from the fear. You tackled the fear. You allowed the fear to enter in to your heart, and in your heart space you started to rearrange the parts and disassemble what didn't need to be there, eliminating parts that didn't need to be there, all of the irrationalities that come with fear, right? All of the unnecessary what ifs that just never happen, right? You put too much focus on that, those what ifs go from possibles to probables and probables to realities, right? So you're not swinging in the wrong direction pole-wise. You're not being polarized toward the negative. So you're handling fear. You're stepping through fear. The same thing like stepping through death to get to life, to get to eternity. You're stepping through death. So death is not something to fear, just like fear is not something to fear. These things are just archways. Like you have archangels, archangels. These things are just arcs for you to pass through to get from one side to the other. So again, it's Super T Sigma of Sigma Program, and I thank you for your time and attention. You already know over here, reaching is teaching. Continue to stay balanced. Continue to stay balanced. Continue to stay uplifted. Continue to encourage each other and encourage yourself. And remember too, in all of that, vibrate high. Peace.